Fantastic. Thanks, Nicola, and good morning to everybody. So yes, my name is David. I'm from People's Postcode Lottery, and I'll hopefully be able to give you a good comprehensive overview of what funds we have available this year and how to go about applying for those funds and the best way to go about making the most of your application. So if you bear with me one moment, I will share my screen for the presentation. Coming through to you all now. And as Nicola said, we'll be taking questions, so you can either pop them in the chat window or save them until the end. But first of all, big thanks to Wiltshire Community Foundation for having us along today. It's great to see so many organisations represented here today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing some applications coming through from you in the coming rounds. And then second of all, the second thanks goes to any of you that are players of People's Postcode Lottery. It's obviously thanks to your ticket sales that we have so much great funding to give away. So at the moment, 33% of all tickets go to good causes, and obviously a larger proportion go to the prizes, and then a smaller proportion, the smallest of all three sections, for the actual winning of the lottery and trust itself. So this figure has increased over the past few years and continues to do so. So again, big thanks to any of you that are players that make that possible. So some of you may be familiar with our trust from previous applications. So we have been able to make some changes for the goods over the past couple of years, thanks to the increasing levels of funding that we've had available. So back in 2021, we had a restructure of the community programmes trusts, and we now have 6 trusts that cover different regions or nations of Great Britain, rather than the 3 trusts that we previously had that covered different themes. We'll go into more detail about the trust areas and the themes that we cover a little bit later on. But I'm assuming that the majority of organisations here will be carrying out work in the sort of west and southwest of England. So the trust that covers that area is Postcode Local Trust. Now we know that some organisations might be doing work in a wider region or indeed nationally, so that doesn't rule you out of applying for funding. What we'd ask you to do is apply for the trust area that either the majority of your work is carried out in, or if you are truly a national organisation, apply to the trust where your organisation is based. If you're unsure of what trust covers, where the majority of your work is being carried out, or if you have a specific project being carried out in a different area, then if you go to any of the trust websites, there is a handy community trust finder tool that allows you to pop in the postcode of the area where the work is happening, and it will direct you to the correct trust to apply to. If you do have any sort of more complex questions about what trust you should be applying to, then that's definitely something that we're happy to have a conversation with you, whether it be via email or via telephone. And obviously I'll share the contact details at the end of the presentation. Now, as I mentioned, we have 8 different themes. So what are we looking to fund in essence? So all 6 of the trusts have the same 8 themes, and so it doesn't matter where in the country you're looking to carry out activities, we sort of offer funding for the same 8 topics or subjects. So these themes are really important to your application. So either the project that you're looking to carry out or your organisation itself must have a strong link to one of these themes. We hope that the variety of themes that are on offer covers most organisations, or the work that most organisations are doing. They are fairly broad in their reach. So we'd ask you to have a look through these themes and consider which one is the best fit for your project or organisation. We do ask you to only pick one. We know that you may sort of cross over into multiple areas, but please focus your application on one theme in particular. So we'll have a quick run through of those themes. So improving mental well-being is one that we've seen sort of a massive increase in applications for over the past couple of years. I think largely down to the impact of increasing isolation due to the pandemic and everything that's sort of gone along with that. Enabling community participation in the arts is one that we're seeing, again, an increase in applications, but maybe not to the same degree as improving mental well-being. And that can be quite wide in terms of not necessarily just involving people in getting being more creative and getting involved in the arts directly. It can be that that has a a link to mental health and mental well-being as well. Preventing or reducing the impact of poverty is unfortunately a hot topic at the moment with the increasing cost of living. And we're seeing a lot more applications for support with budgeting and fuel poverty. So we do expect that to be, again, a focus of a lot of applications. Supporting marginalised groups and promoting equality was one of our newer themes. And again, one that we're keen to see applications come through that have a direct impact in those areas. Improving biodiversity and green spaces is one of, I guess, 3 sort of environmental or sustainability themed topics. So this can be quite a heavy topic for a small organisation to take on, but it can be quite small scale in its reach as well. So if it's a small green space that you're looking to make improvements either for biodiversity or simply for people being able to use it more regularly, then we're interested in hearing what you've got to propose. Enabling participation in physical activity, quite a popular one, but just to note that it's not necessarily limited to sports. We're talking about all different types of physical activity, so that could be dance classes, it could be gardening groups where the participants are actually taking part in the sort of physical aspect of gardening, and it can definitely be some good exercise. So maybe sort of widen the scope of thinking that as just a sports-focused theme. Responding to the climate emergency and promoting sustainability, certainly like with the recent COP26 event just last year. This is something that we were keen to see more applications from. Again, quite a heavy topic for perhaps a small voluntary organisation to take on, but it doesn't have to be grand plans. It can be very localised pieces of action that you're looking to take, and we're definitely happy to support those smaller scale activities as well. And then last of all, increasing community access to outdoor space. Again, this is something that we've seen probably an increase compared to previous years during the pandemic, as we've realised that outdoor spaces are so valuable to us, and people are wanting to make the most of them more and more. So whether it's putting in disabled access to a garden or a walkway, or just making it more accessible for all ages and people to use, we're happy to consider all types of application. So as I said, these are important to your application. It really is key that when we're looking through your proposal that we can see the link to one of these themes quite readily. And we'll go into more detail about whether it's best for the organisation or the activities to fit later on when we're talking about the different types of funding that is available. Having had a look at what we funded in the sort of Wiltshire area in the past, so over the past 3 or 4 years, we've made 39 awards, totaling over £378,000 in funding made to groups within your area. So I've highlighted just a couple here, so I'm not sure if any representatives of these organisations are here today, but if you are, it's fantastic work that you're doing, but if not, we are looking for more groups within this area. So Nadder Community Energy were funded with an award of £2,000 to secure a professional accountant just to help with the running of their community car club to make sure that it was going to be sustainable in the long term. So just an example of where quite a small award of £2,000 can contribute to a longer term project. And then secondly, we've got care home volunteers. So they received £10,000, and this was principally for the recruitment and training of volunteers via the taking on board a volunteer coordinator. So two fantastic examples of work that's happening within your area. I'm sure there's plenty more fantastic organisations and ideas waiting for a little bit of funding to help kickstart or continue your work. So we'll look forward to hopefully seeing some applications coming through in the coming months. Now, in terms of what's available, probably the part that you're all most interested in. So again, there's been some changes to the funding offer compared to previous years. So even if you are a previous applicant or a previous grantee, it's worth taking note of these changes. So we now offer grants of starting at £500 up to a total of £25,000. If you're looking for more than £2,500, you do have to be a fully registered charity, a community benefit society, or a community interest company with an asset lock. We are happy to support constituted voluntary organisations or community amateur sports clubs and similar organisations, but only up to the value of £2,500. Again, if you're not quite sure what type of organisation you are and are wanting confirmation of what you're eligible to apply for, then please do get in touch and we'll happily talk you through the process. We now also offer up to an 18-month period to utilise funds. Previously, we only offered a 12-month period. And so that's from the date in which you receive funds. And this year, we're looking to get funding out within 8 weeks of applications going live. So if you do apply in May's round, we're looking to have funds out to you in June. So you then at the end of June rather, and therefore you'd have 18 months from that date to utilise the funding. But we do support everything from 1 day of activities right up to a full programme of events for 18 months. We have also changed the type of funding that we offer as well. So for the first time this year, organisations can apply for unrestricted funding or project funding, and it's essentially whatever is most suitable or most required by your organisation. And just to expand a little bit on what we define unrestricted funding as, because I know that there's some differences of opinion within the sector as to what unrestricted and project funding is. So we essentially see this as an opportunity for you to apply for funding that supports your organisation do what it is doing or has been doing for a number of years. We look at it as being quite flexible in that we do ask for you to give a summary of your intentions of what you use the funding for, but you're free to make changes to that through the term of the funding. You don't have to consult us. You can make those changes and then include them in your short end of funding review. You do have to, however, bear in mind that we do have a number of things that we do not fund. I'll go through them in a few slides' time, but they can all be found on the funding guide that's downloadable from the website. So essentially, if you are an organisation that is carrying out any activities that are on that list of things that we don't fund, then that would unfortunately mean that you aren't able to apply for unrestricted funding, because you could technically then divert those funds to those activities, but you would be able to apply for project-specific funding. What I would say is that project funding is itself quite flexible. We allow you to apply for equipment, so always quite a popular thing to apply for. So that can be right up to the full value of your proposal. We do require quotes, but only for individuals' physical items valued at over £1,000. So if you have any sort of really expensive bits of audiovisual equipment or just expensive laptop, it's valued at over £1,000 for the individual item, then we would require a quote for that. But we don't require quotes for staff costs or going to events or that sort of thing. We also allow you to apply for staff costs, again up to the full value of the proposal. And we know that staff are really really important to get those activities delivered and keep your organisation running. So we're happy to again support those costs. In terms of training for both staff and volunteers, we're happy to cover training costs and also volunteer costs, so reimbursement of expenses. And what we'd advise is that if you're looking for volunteer expenses, you try and stipulate what those expenses are, so whether it's going to be mileage or covering meal costs and things, rather than just giving quite a generic cost. So essentially, where you're putting your costs in, try and be as specific and detailed as possible. We also cover things like marketing costs, so whether that's traditional leafleting or putting up posters or sort of social media posts, so sponsored posts as well. We're happy to cover those so you can help spread the word far and wide. And we also allow you to include the sort of core costs that are associated with your project. So you can include a proportion of your rent costs, or even your chief executive or administrator costs, as long as it's just a proportion of the overall proposal and not just a standalone core costs request. Again, I'd advise to refer to the funding guide for a full list of the things that we do and don't fund. In terms of the application process this year, we've again tried to keep it quite short and as simple as we possibly can. It's just a one-stage process, so there's no sort of opportunity to provide additional information after you've made your proposal. So it's really important that you include as much information and detail as possible, and also the supporting documents that we require, and this is your sort of one and only opportunity to provide them as well. So the application form itself is online. It will go live at 9 AM on the first working day of each month. This coming month in May, we are aware that that's a bank holiday. We are going to stick with that opening date, but in the future we will try to avoid bank holidays where possible. Just it does become a bit of an issue when there's different bank holidays across different regions and nations of the country. It's at this stage that you'll choose whether you're going for project or unrestricted funding. So there is a slightly different set of questions for both streams. A copy of the questions that are asked are available to download on the website just now as a Word document, just so that you can prepare your answers in advance or perhaps collaborate with other members of your organisations. So please do take note that there is different sections for the different types of funding. You'll also be asked to provide 2 supporting documents. These are again key to your application. So we need the governing document of your organisation that outlines your organisation's objects as well as how your organisation is run, and also your most recent set of accounts. So if you're a charity or a company, please make sure that these are the most recent set of formal accounts that have been signed off by trustees or directors. And it is important that if you're required by Charity Commission rules to have an audit or an independent examination, that the report from the examiner is both included in those accounts as well as being signed. So please do make sure that if your income is over 25k, and you're a charity, then you do require that independent examination, and we will check for it. As I mentioned previously, we do require quotes for individual sort of high cost physical items, so please make sure that they're included and that they're dated from within the past 3 months. We only require 1 quote, so I know that some funders do require 3, but we know that it can be quite tricky to get 3 quotes for especially some quite specialist equipment, so 1 quote will suffice. At this stage, we also ask for contact details of 2 people that you'd like to nominate as referees. These should be people and/or organisations that you've worked with in a professional capacity. So, for example, it could be a local authority that you've partnered with on a previous project. and could be a previous funder, could be a local councillor, or if you do have a good relationship with the likes of Wiltshire Community Foundation, and if they're willing to provide referees, then they could be an option for you as well. We will contact them within the sort of first 4 weeks of your application being submitted. So please, first of all, check that the person you'd like to nominate is happy for you to do so, and that they will be available to respond to an email at some point within the first 4 weeks of your application. As always with the application process, we're going to be on hand to help with any questions or issues with the form. In the past sort of 3 months, things have gone sort of fairly well with the form, but there are occasionally a few gremlins that creep in with you know, the phone numbers not being accepted or email addresses not being accepted. So we will be on hand on the help desk, so please do give us a call if you come across any issues. The application form online, it's not currently accessible. It will go live, as I said, at 9 AM, and we only accept applications via that form. So the questions that are downloadable just now are purely for reference purposes, and we don't accept emailed in copies of that Word document. As I mentioned, there are a few things that we don't fund. So we do have a requirement that organisations have an income of less than £1 million in their most recent financial year. Depending on the level of applications, which to be honest has been quite high over the past few months, we may reduce that to £500,000 when it comes to shortlisting. But if we do make a sort of hard change to that eligibility, we will advertise that via the website, and it will also ask you on the form what your income was, and if it's over £1 million, it won't let you submit your application. We don't fund any statutory bodies, so local authorities, schools, NHS Foundation trusts, for example. Also don't fund individuals or commercial businesses. You must be fully not-for-profit in terms of your constitution. We don't fund any medical equipment, medical research or treatment or medical staff. I know that there can be some sort of grey areas around this, but again, please do get in touch if you think that you're doing something that could be construed as being medical. Promotion of religion, that's something that we don't fund any activities of, but we have funded numerous religious organisations in the past, as we do know that they carry out some fantastic work in the community, doing sort of food banks and outreach and support services. So you would be restricted to applying for project funding in these instances, as you know, obviously unrestricted funding could be diverted to other uses that we're not so keen to fund. And the same goes for animal welfare. If your organisation is primarily an animal welfare organisation, that would rule you out of applying for funding. But if you do sort of things like therapets and the like, then you could apply for project funding, as long as that's reflected in your governing document, and that's the remit of your organisation extends to those activities. So schools, PTAs, nurseries, colleges, universities, again, we don't fund them. There is a partnership fund that we offer for some specific activities in schools and nurseries, which we'll go into at the end of the application. So there is a small opportunity for them still to receive funding from the trusts. So when can you apply? The next round, as I said, is opening on this coming Monday. We will open for funding each month up until and including October this year. So there will be plenty of other opportunities if the bank holiday opening doesn't suit your organisation. We are only accepting a limited number of applications each month. Based on the last few months in the postcode local trust area, the form has stayed open in most cases for at least a day, which again doesn't sound a lot, but just we're seeing a sort of overwhelming amount of interest in the funds this year. We do guarantee that the form will stay open for a minimum of 3 hours, which again isn't a lot, but it does. Having that cap does allow us to get back to organisations within a sort of timely manner and keep the success rate at a reasonable level. So if you're able to get online between 9 and midday on Monday, you will be able to access the form. The form will stay open until you've completed it, but there's no save function. So if you navigate away from the form at any point, then if the limit has been reached, then you won't be able to access the form again. So essentially, if there's a button on the website that allows you to access the form, you can go ahead and make an application. We're allowing organisations to make up to 3 applications this year. So if you are unsuccessful on a couple of occasions, you'll still be able to apply one final time. And we do provide feedback after every application. So this is just a screenshot of the website where you'll be able to access that form. See, at the moment it's not available, but you can download the funding guide. That's always a great place to start. We'd always recommend that you double check that the trust is the correct one sort of geographically for where your activities are happening. And then the sort of last green box at the bottom there is the Word document that has this year's questions for you to download. So as we've been running the fund for quite a few years now, we have seen some sort of common things that crop up that make organisations' applications ineligible. So it's a key one is if you have been funded by any of the trusts supported by Players of People's Postcode Lottery before, then you must return a funding review to us before you can make a future application. It's also worth pointing out that we only accept one application per organisation each round, and that's whether you're looking to make different applications across different trusts. It's essentially that we'll accept one application to trusts supported by People's Postcode Lottery per round. As I mentioned, it is important that you apply to the correct trust for the area that you're looking to carry out activities in. We unfortunately can't swap you across different trusts as they are separate legal entities and do have to accept applications along different processes. Again, it's worth checking if your organisation is eligible to apply for the amount that you're looking to apply for. So again, if you're looking for more than £2,500, you do have to be a properly constituted charity, community benefit society, or community interest company. If you apply for anything that's listed on the things on the What We Don't Fund guide, then that would invalidate your whole application. We can't sort of remove that item from your application and consider the rest. So again, worth having a final check before you submit your application. And then if you don't supply the governing document and accounts as requested, then essentially due to the volume of applications that we have to go through and the timescales involved, we really don't have time to sort of chase up to get those governing documents or accounts. Something we quite often see is bank statements being submitted in lieu of accounts, and that's unfortunately not what we're looking for. It has to be the sort of records of your income and expenditure that we're looking for. But as I said, I would wholly advise to have a read through the funding guide in the first instance, as that will give you a good basis for making an application. If you do happen to be unsuccessful, then as I mentioned, we do provide feedback as a matter of course. That will be part of the email you receive notifying you of the outcome of your application. It is fairly brief, but we are happy to follow up on that if you request additional feedback. And as I mentioned, you will be eligible to reapply to the next available round up to a limit of 3 applications. And again, as I mentioned, we are happy to provide support via phone or email at any point of the application process. As I mentioned, we do have a couple of partnership programs that offer additional opportunities to apply for funding. With both of these, the application process is fully managed by the partner organisations, so you apply via their websites rather than the trust websites, and full details of deadlines and dates, etc., will be available on both organisations' websites as well. So the first one we'll give you details of today is the Local School Nature Grants programme run by Learning Through Landscapes. So this is open to schools, preschools, nurseries, pupil referral units and special schools, and it offers £500 worth of equipment and additional training for those really fun and engaging outdoor learning activities. Certainly always a highlight of my time at school. So that helps upskill staff members and volunteers to deliver lessons with nature as a tool. So this is a fairly short online application form and has a relatively high success rate as well. So if you are involved in a school in any way, shape or form that you think this could be an interest to, then please do direct them to the Learning Through Landscapes website. And then secondly, we have the Magic Little Grants programme, and this is delivered by Local Giving, and this offers £500 for smaller projects that are linked to the same 8 themes of the main funding that I spoke about. It's a shorter and quicker application form. Again, the success rate is probably a bit higher than the main trust as well. So if you've got maybe a short-term or smaller project and you're an organisation that has an income of less than £250,000, this could be a good starting point for you. Applications opened earlier this year in March, and again will stay open until October as well. So there's plenty of opportunities still to apply. Applying for this grant doesn't then bar you from applying for funds from the main programme. You can sort of start off small and then apply for a bigger or further grant from ourselves. However, you can't go the other way. So if you receive funding from ourselves through the main programme, you can't then apply for the smaller grant. But again, any questions re eligibility, we're happy to take those. So hopefully that's given you a fairly quick overview of the funding that we have on offer and how to make an application, as well as what we're looking for. So the slides I think will be circulated by Wiltshire Community Foundation, so you'll have a copy of the web address and the email address from those. But as we mentioned at the start, happy to take any questions that you have now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. There were some questions in the chat, so I'll just put those to you, and then if anyone else has anything else. So Hannah was asking, is there any set closing dates for your applications? You know you open each month on a Monday, but is there any set closing dates for those?
Yeah, so it's a yes and no. So we open on the first working day of the month, and then the maximum time that we would stay open is 10 working days. However, due to the level of interest that we've seen in the level of applications that we're getting, the cap on applications is being reached very quickly. So in some cases it's been that it closes at midday on the day that it opens. In some cases it's been open for 2 or 3 days. It just depends on the level of interest in that given month. So what we advise, if possible, it would be best to log on as close to 9 AM on the day that the form goes live to get an application in. Again, I'm aware that it's a bank holiday this Monday, so perhaps the following month will be a better option. So yeah, hopefully the number of rounds that are still available in the year will somewhat counterweigh the sort of small window each month that the applications will be open.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jenny's asked, I think you've already covered this, but do you fund parish councils?
So we don't fund parish councils because they are considered a statutory organisation. We will fund parochial church councils though, for project-specific funding.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the accounts and reserves, do you have a policy or any restrictions about how much reserves an organisation can hold to make an application to you? So
that's a question that we actually specifically ask in our application, is what is your reserves policy and what are your current level of reserves? In saying that, we know that the last 2 years have been very tough for a lot of organisations and have had to dip into reserves. So if there is a sort of marked difference between your policy and your current reserves level, we just look for that to be addressed somewhere in the accounts, from the trustee or director's report, just sort of acknowledging that there is a sort of a difference in the policy and the current level, and what steps you're taking to address that.
Yeah, thank you. And sticking with the theme of accounts, Sandy's asked, they're still having their accounts verified at the moment, so potentially wouldn't be ready in time for making an application to you with their current set. Can they send you their last year's accounts?
Yeah, so as long as they're from the 1920 financial year at the very sort of earliest, we're happy to accept those, because we know that there's different financial years and different organisations and different amounts of time to get them signed off, etc. So yeah, as long as they're from 1920 at the very highest.
Great, thank you. Azella, we've got one group that actually operates in 3 different geographical locations. What would you recommend that they make an application to for each individual area they work in, or one which covers the whole?
Yeah, so because we only accept one application per organisation, even if you're looking at different trust areas, it is limited just to one per organisation. And then in terms of what trust to apply to, either the one where the majority of the work is being carried out, or if it is equally split over the 3 different areas, where your head office is based, essentially, would be the best one.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Somebody's asked, could you explain just a bit more about the difference between unrestricted and project funding, what that means?
Yeah, so our take is that unrestricted funding is more about supporting the organisation in general. So that's where we would be looking for the objects and the general description of the organisation to have a really good fit with one of our themes. Project funding may be more specifically sort of time bound and focus on a specific set of activities that will link to the chosen theme. And unrestricted funding is a lot more flexible, so we basically give you free rein to use it however you see fit. So whether that's covering core costs for your organisation, looking at development costs or fundraising costs, rather than maybe your sort of frontline, on the ground work with beneficiaries. But ultimately, supporting your organisation should have a positive impact on beneficiaries. And as I say, the reason we kept project funding in there as an option is that some organisations won't be eligible to apply for unrestricted funding if they, for instance, carry out work overseas, do have religious services or animal welfare services, sort of kept project funding as an option for them. And also that some organisations may just be looking for a specific project to be funded at this time as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And then you talked in detail about part of the application you look for quotes, so if you're supporting costs. Somebody's asked if they're looking to do some landscaping and paving, would the cost, finding out the cost, suffice as a quote?
So yeah, for that sort of bit of work, then a quote's not strictly necessary, but certainly could be worthwhile including in your application, just so we have a sort of confirmation of the full cost. In terms of the sort of level of quote that it requires, sort of, yeah, if it's an email from the supplier outlining the details, that's fine. If it's a formal formal quote, that's perfect. I'm not so keen on websites with sort of general costs, unless it's maybe for a sort of a laptop or that sort of thing, because those costs can change, and what we want to avoid is a situation where an organisation puts together a project, has it costed up, and then when they come to actually buy that equipment, they find that the cost is vastly different to what they'd initially envisaged. We don't really have the flexibility to award more funding after an initial application, as also we have a constant stream of new projects coming through.
Great. So sticking with the theme of cost, is there a maximum % of the total cost that you'd fund? So would you fund all of something or just a percentage?
Yes, it's a good question to bring up. So yeah, we are happy to either be the sole funder for a project or a piece of equipment, or also be sort of a piece of a larger jigsaw. We don't require match funding, and it doesn't add any weight to an application. You know, we really are happy to be sort of either the sole funder or a part of that mix. If you are looking for other funding, we don't even require it to be secured as of yet. We know that a lot of applications can depend on other applications being through. So all we look for you to have is a strong idea of where the other funding is going to come from, rather than it having been actually secured at this date.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's just a couple more questions in the chat that's popped up. Again, looking at the accounts, so Karen has asked, please can you clarify again the need for independent audited accounts if budget over a certain amount?
Yeah, so this is something that applies to constituted charities, and it's something that we've seen quite a lot of issues with this year actually. So yeah, if you are a charity that's regulated by the Charity Commission or Oscar in Scotland, then if your income has been over £25,000 in the last year, then you're required to get an independent examination of your accounts. And it's something that, you know, if it is at a level just over £25,000, it's quite straightforward to do. It doesn't have to be a formal accountant that does it, but there's plenty of guidance on the Charity Commission website as to what is required. It's just essentially that there's another set of eyes on your accounts to make sure that everything has been recorded properly, and that's something that we look for as essentially a requirement from the Charity Commission. However, we do know that the Charity Commission don't check the accounts that get submitted to them, so it's not always the case that it's definitely there if the accounts have been uploaded to the Charity Commission. So if you're in doubt, then I'd advise just having a quick look at the guidance on the Charity Commission website.
Thank you. And then just one more question about the application process. So do you need to complete the application in one go on the opening day? And then also, can people call you and before you open to get some advice and support and talk about the project and whether it would be fit?
Yeah. So on the first question, essentially, yes, you would have to finish it on the day that you start it. As I said, we'll keep the form open for those that are still working on it after the sort of deadline has passed in terms of the number of applications. And we can see when applications are still being worked on, but we will only keep it open for sort of the day that it's been started on, as we do want to get sort of started on the assessment process as quickly as possible. So yeah, I wouldn't really advise sort of starting an application on one day and then leaving it overnight and sort of leaving it until later on, as we may sort of make the assumption that you've decided not to continue with it.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks, David, for that. And if you've got any more questions, do put them in the chat and we can sort of pick them up at the end. I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Karen now, Carrie Hobbs, who's the other grants officer here at the Foundation, who will talk you through our current grant programmes that are open for applications.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. I think Nicola's going to put the slides up. Is that okay? Yeah. So we can run through our programmes. Now, I know that probably quite a few people will be familiar with it, but it's always quite useful to have a refresher of our main programme, and also at the end I'll just talk about some other individual programmes that we've got coming up either shortly or later on in the year. Okay, so do you want to go on to the first slide? Lovely. So just a reminder of what we do as a foundation. Lots of people will know us for our grants to groups, but also have a few grant programmes for individuals, which I will mention a little bit later on. We also do provide some advice and information for groups, but we also support donors to give to their community, whether that be companies or trusts or individuals. So it's where we get the money from, I guess, to give out to other people. So we have strong relationships with donors, and we also do some work around exploring the need in Wiltshire and Swindon, so that we sort of understand how our grants are targeted. And also we can provide information to help you with your application forms as well. Okay, and so our main grants programme, you may be familiar in the past with our foundation grants and our small grants programme. These have been renamed as the community grants programme. This is one single programme. It supports people and communities in need in Wiltshire and Swindon. You can apply for projects and activities that improve people's lives, and grants can be awarded for 1, 2 or 3 years. You can apply for a minimum of £750 per year up to a maximum of £5,000 per year. But just to note, if you are applying for capital, that's just that would be a one-off grant of a maximum of £5,000, but you would need to have the majority of the rest of the funding available, available before you apply to us for topping up if it's a larger grant, requirement. So our priorities for this grant programme at the moment are grassroots and small to medium-sized organisations. People on low incomes, that's the people that are benefiting from the project or the work that you want to do, need to be living on low income. So i.e. people or communities that could not afford to provide that service for themselves in some way. Particularly projects and activities that address the ongoing impact of the pandemic, that support children and young people, that prevent or alleviate poor mental health, or tackle poverty and inequality. Now, we are happy to consider applications that don't fall into those 4 themes if you've identified a particular need in your area, but obviously we'd need to know how you've identified that need and what evidence you've used for that. Want to move on to the next one. You can apply for a grant that continues what you're already doing, so core costs for your main activity. You could apply for a new activity, so to pilot something or a new project. And that can include any reasonable costs around core or running costs, project and activity costs, or capital costs. But again, as I've mentioned before, only if you already have the rest of the funds you need for the capital element. And you must start planning to spend the grant within 6 months of when it was awarded. So grant periods, will be a year at a time. So you can apply for up to three years, but you need to be really able, in a position to spend it within the 12 months for each grant payment. You want to move forward? Yeah. So we can fund constituted voluntary or community organisations. We can fund registered charities. We will fund not-for-profit companies, which include community interest companies, but those companies need to essentially run along the similar lines to a charity, so that you must have a minimum of 3 directors, and majority of those directors must receive no payment for the company. So they must essentially be working in a voluntary position as a director. You can only hold 1 grant at a time, so you couldn't apply for another community grant where you're still spending an existing community grant. Organisations need to be locally based or within the region, so Wiltshire or Swindon, or in the south or southwest of England, but the beneficiaries of any project that you run must live within Wiltshire or Swindon. So if you're based in the south or southwest, the beneficiaries must still live within Wiltshire or Swindon. You can apply if you're a branch of a national organisation, but you must have your own local management committee, own constitution and own bank account. You want to move forward. So again, we require organisations to have an active voluntary management committee, which must consist of at least 3 people. But those 3 people cannot be related to each other or in a long-term relationship or living at the same address. So there must be at least 3 completely separate independent people managing the organisation. And then financial arrangements and documents that you need to have in place and provide would be a bank account, and we need to see at least 2 signatories that are not related to each other. You need to have less than 12 months running costs in unrestricted reserves. You must be able to provide some financial records or accounts. A financial plan for the current financial year. This is something we found quite useful during the COVID grant programme. So it's really helpful that we can see what your projections are going forward and where our grant would fit within that. A recent bank statement and obviously your constitutional governing document. We were also quite keen on promoting good practice around safeguarding inequalities. So we would like to see a safeguarding inequalities policy. If you haven't got as far as developing these policies, then do have a conversation with us. We will chat it through with you. We have some simple guidance on the our website that points you to some other places that you can get some support around those two topics. But yeah, we will discuss it with you. You can still apply if you don't have those documents, but we'll chat that through during the assessment process. You can apply for a very new organisation and don't have some of those things in place, but you must make your application under the umbrella of another charitable organisation. So you'd need to get another organisation that is constituted, does have everything in place, and they would help to manage the grant with you. Okay, do you want to move forward? Yeah. Similarly to a lot of funders, the things that we don't fund, we can't, the community grant programme cannot fund individuals or families, or the grant that is paid to an organisation cannot then be paid to individuals or families. We can't fund activities that duplicate an existing service. So this is something really important when you're making an application. Make sure you know what else is going on in your area, who else is doing what you want to do, how does your service fit in with that, or are you fitting, are you filling a gap in your area? We can't fund one-off or sponsored events, the advancement of religion, medical research and equipment, animal welfare, political activities. We've already mentioned individuals. We don't fund schools and we don't fund statutory bodies through this fund. Some of our other funds that we run on behalf of other people may include schools and parish councils, for example, but not our own community fund. Do you want to move forward, Nicola? That's it. Okay, so talking about a fund that does cover schools and parish councils, some of the other things that we have on some of the other grant programmes that we're running at the moment, we work quite closely with Wessex Water, whose area covers several community foundations locally, including Wiltshire, but not Swindon, unfortunately. They run two funds with us each year. The one that we've got opening at the end of this week is the Environment Fund. These are for grants up to £1,500, and it's supporting charitable and community activities, but they're focusing on local biodiversity or positive impact on the local environment for local people. So it's fairly broad. They want applications to demonstrate the following outcomes, so one or more of the following outcomes. They want to support projects that involve communities in environmental activities that benefit the local area, have a positive impact on the local environment, or shares learning with people about supporting the environment. And their priorities are, as you would imagine from a water company, reduction in water use, improving environmental sustainability in the local area, and improvements in local biodiversity. We have got the page up already on the website, so you can go and look for lots more information, and that includes a few examples of the types of things that have been funded before, so community gardens and community growing projects, and involving local people in researching water quality on the River Avon, recycling projects, all sorts of things. If you want to have a look at that, the information is there, but the application form won't be available till Friday. Let's go on. So the other fund that Wessex Water run with us is a community fund, so it's much more similar to our community grant programme. That will be opening sort of later in the year. For that programme, grants are up to £3,000. And this is for projects that improve the lives of local people, especially those who are most in need of support. So again, looking at people on low income particularly. And the priorities priorities for that would be people in financial difficulty or who are lacking access to services, projects taking place in areas of multiple deprivation or rural isolation, projects that are building stronger and more resilient communities, or projects that help manage or avoid debt. So that's quite a focus for them. Sorry, go forward, Nicola. Yeah, thank you. And then we mentioned that we do have some grant programs that give to individuals. So we have a number of programs that support young people with their education, learning and employment. So we have a vocational grant that's open all year. Grants are up to £1,000, and that's for young people aged 14 to 24. And that's undertaking any vocational course, training or apprenticeships that will help towards the costs of attending a course. And a newer fund for us is the Southwest Enterprise Fund. Again, that's open all year. That's grants up to £2,000. That's young people aged 18 to 30 who are planning to start their own business within the next 6 months. And that have been trading for no more than 2 years. So that's a really exciting new fund for supporting young people with startup businesses. Okay, and then just to let you know about our future events, we do have several network meetings that have developed over the last few years. We have Swindon Connecting People and Wiltshire Connecting People. That's about organisations, particularly those that are sort of working on reducing isolation and loneliness, building connections with communities for people. But I mean, that covers an awful lot of the work that many of the groups that we fund do. And we've also, during COVID, particularly developed a youth network. This is for youth work organisations and helping them to sort of liaise with each other and also, you know, work with, you know, the police, local authorities and other organisations. And then we have workshops coming up around demonstrating your impact, better grant applications, funding strategy and understanding need, which is something I mentioned right at the beginning. We have, you know, reports that pull together a lot of the statistics for our area. So looking at how you can use that need information to support your applications. And we will continue for the time being to have our Meet the Funder webinars monthly, because, you know, we feel that's been really, really valuable for us as well as all the groups that are coming along. So if you want to have a look at any of the information on those events coming up, then do have a look on our website, and bookings can be done through Eventbrite. I think that's probably everything, Nicola, is it? I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what I've said, or I've covered everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's everything. There wasn't any questions relating to our grant programmes. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be sending out the slides to you via email and any links to websites and application forms. So they'll all go out to you via email. We've also recorded today's session and we'll be uploading that to our YouTube channel. You'll be able to access all of our Meet the Funders over the last 12 months there as well, so that's fine. I think Ben had a question around the count, so it might be something that best maybe we could perhaps take offline with you, Ben, just to give you some clarity around that that one there as well. Oh, and Stan, sorry, just going through quickly, Stan, question about to fund solar panels. I don't know if you're still there, David.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so just for everyone's sake, that did apply to Stan directly, but yeah, we will and have done in the past. Obviously, it's up to you to sort of get across how it links to one of the 8 themes. And I think there's obviously quite a strong link to the climate emergency, but yeah, we would fund solar panels.
Okay, hopefully that helps, Stan, and we'll share David's slides and any links to the helpline at the People Postcode Lottery as well with you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, thank you once again for joining us. Many thanks to David as well for coming along and presenting to us on their grant programmes and application process. And hopefully we'll see you all again at our next webinar, which is happening next month. Thank you again. Bye-bye.